Members, good afternoon. We have a quorum, and this is the appointed time. Let me call this meeting to order. First item, information paper issued since the last meeting. The Airport Authority Hong Kong has issued a paper. You should have received it. Next item, schedule of meetings for the remainder of the 2025 session. We have these proposed meetings. There is one in July, the 8th of July, and then no meeting in August, and then the 2nd of September, the next meeting, that's at 4:30 in the afternoon. Following that, in October, we have another meeting on the 14th, again, 4:30 p.m. Please note the schedule. Members, do you agree with the proposed schedule? All right, the next regular meeting is scheduled for the 6th of May this year at 4:30 p.m. We will be discussing the Hong Kong Tourism Board work plan for 2025-26. The panel on Home Affairs, Culture and Sports also discussed an item on the 25th of February 2025, and that relates to developing concert economy and the panda economy. So we'll be discussing the item as well. The next item is introduction of a revalidation mechanism of local certificates of competency. Right, members do agree, I see. The next item is item 4, update on Hong Kong Disneyland Resort. The administration has issued a paper, and let me now invite the administration as well as representatives of Hong Kong Disneyland Management Limited to come in. Members, if you want to speak, please press the button now. Very keen response from the floor. 12 members have signed up so far. Welcome, Secretary. Welcome.
係。我哋已經有13位議員。
Right, I see 13 members have indicated they wish to speak. But I will first invite the administration, perhaps the Secretary, to walk us through the paper. Thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly, I will say a few words, and then I will give the floor to Mr. Moriarty to give you more details about today's paper. Now, we'd like to report to members in relation to the operation of the Hong Kong Disneyland Resort, Hong Kong DL, in fiscal year 2024, covering the 1st of October 2023 to 28th of September 2024. The fiscal year 2024 marks a very special year for the Hong Kong Disneyland. In terms of total attendance, it's 7.7 million attendances were recorded, and that's up by 21% year on year. That's a record high since its opening in 2005. As for EBITDA, it increased to a record high of 2,323 million. As for net profit, we also recorded a record high of 838 million Hong Kong dollars. Now, according to the Hong Kong Tourism Board's analysis in 2024, in terms of the most popular paid tourist attraction, Hong Kong Disneyland ranked the first, and apart from appealing to tourists, the Hong Kong Disneyland also brings a lot of economic benefits, cumulative benefits, in fact, of $149.1 billion. And on top of that, the Hong Kong Disneyland is also one of the major employers in the entertainment business. It creates a lot of jobs. It also nurtures talents and supports youth development. And the Hong Kong Disneyland also is integral to the development of entertainment, sports, and tourism. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the Hong Kong Disneyland, and starting from June, a series of brand new events will be hosted, including the Castle show, as well as a special nighttime spectacular called Momentous, as well as the Fantastic Parade. The Hong Kong Disneyland will continue to work with the Tourism Board as well as other collaborating partners to mount targeted publicity for different clientele and markets. As for the development blueprint for Hong Kong's tourism industry 2.0, the Bureau will continue to work closely with the Walt Disney Company in taking forward the multi-year expansion and development plan. There are some outstanding projects such as the Marvel-themed attraction, and we'll also explore how we'll further enhance the guest offerings for Disneyland, as well as making the Disneyland an iconic and landmark tourist attraction in Hong Kong. In fact, the Disneyland recently announced a brand new entertainment attraction in the expansion area. The Hong Kong Disneyland plays a pivotal role in promoting Hong Kong as an international premium tourism hub as well as an international holiday resort. In fact, in the development blueprint, it has been said that the Disneyland will make the Lantau a tourism island. And I will now give the floor to Mr. Moriarty.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, I'm pleased to share with you that fiscal 24 has been a magical year for Hong Kong Disneyland. Last year, we shared how we turned profitable during calendar 23, how we were emerging from the challenges of the pandemic, and how we were establishing ourselves as a key driver of Hong Kong tourism. I'm proud to report that we have continued to grow from strength to strength. We have delivered record financial results across the board in fiscal 24. We lead the way in Hong Kong's tourism growth, creating a unique tourist destination in the Greater Bay Area. We have also been preparing for the future, positioning Hong Kong Disneyland for sustained growth and contributions to the city in the future. However, it's important to remember that all of us are still managing through the lasting impacts of COVID-19 on the travel industry. And when combined with regional macroeconomic factors as well as a slow economy, we can see that the market is undergoing a significant transformation. I'm proud to say, however, that we have met these issues head-on and successfully delivered our best year in the history of the resort. Hong Kong Disneyland made history with record profit during fiscal 24, along with record high attendance, revenue, and EBITDA. We are incredibly proud of our results and the positive impact we have made on Hong Kong. As we approach our 20th anniversary, we have become a fixture in Hong Kong as its top paid attraction, a bright spot for tourism in the region, and proud to be Hong Kong's flagship tourist destination. We have generated historic results across the board with net profit of $838 million, representing a year-on-year improvement of $1.2 billion. A 54% increase in revenue to $8.8 billion, along with prudent cost management, improving EBITDA to more than $2.3 billion. Achieving this level of success under the unfavorable market conditions cannot be done alone. We appreciate all of our guests, our stakeholders and supporters who have become friends and advocates who have stood by us since day one. Lastly, I'd like to thank both of our shareholders, the Hong Kong government, as well as the Walt Disney Company, who have been incredibly supportive of our commitment to continue investing in our future. Our strong business performance has significantly improved our cash position, with cash and equivalents increasing 28%. Our increased cash flow has allowed us to accelerate our loan repayments as well as invest in new guest experiences. The Walt Disney Company provided a revolver facility during the COVID pandemic, which Hong Kong Disneyland did not draw on in fiscal 24. In fact, we fully repaid the outstanding balance in the first quarter of fiscal 24. We've also started to repay the term loans from the Hong Kong government and the Walt Disney Company. And as of the first quarter of this fiscal year, we have already repaid about 2/3 of our term loans. We have also utilized this cash flow to invest in our future, which we'll talk more about later in the presentation. We saw record high attendance, up 21% to 7.7 million, with a balanced mix of guests from all around the world. I'm delighted to share that Attendance from all segments, local, mainland China, and other markets surpassed pre-pandemic levels in 2018, and our non-local attendance growth continuing to outpace Hong Kong's overall arrival growth. Our top 5 source markets outside of Hong Kong and the mainland are the Philippines, Taiwan, Thailand, Japan, and Singapore. So despite arrivals being below pre-pandemic levels, Hong Kong remains a top tourist destination in the world. For nearly 2 decades, we have offered a unique Disney storytelling and authentic experiences to locals and tourists alike, transforming the industry, becoming an icon for Hong Kong's tourism as its top paid attraction. Not only are we driving direct value, but Hong Kong Disneyland guests spent an additional $21.6 billion while visiting Hong Kong. It's this type of contribution that has paid for Hong Kong Disneyland's investment and makes us an important part of Hong Kong's economic future. In fact, the government has mentioned in 2016 that Hong Kong Disneyland has achieved economic break-even by 2012. As an individual company, last year we contributed more than $12 billion to Hong Kong's overall GDP and created over 22,000 jobs. We take enormous pride in giving back to our city and delivering value to the people of Hong Kong. The impact of Hong Kong Disneyland's magic extends beyond the financial and into the hearts of those who need us the most. Last year, we donated more than 100,000 park tickets to NGOs, bringing happiness to every corner of the community. Our cast members have also given more than 123,000 hours since we've opened to help those in need. To expand upon the impact of Hong Kong Disneyland's magic to those who need us, I am thrilled to announce that in celebration of our 20th anniversary, we will double our donation of complimentary tickets to 200,000 to the community this year. It is our hope to share this magical moment with everyone. Looking back at 2024, Hong Kong Disneyland continued to bring happiness and support the community as we launched Play Well with Disney at Hong Kong's Children's Hospital and served more than 800 children and their families. We also joined hands with Make-A-Wish Hong Kong to host Summer Snow Day Wishes celebration at the World of Frozen to welcome 130 guests from Singapore, the Philippines, and around the region. We also launched Hong Kong's largest social adaptation training program for children with special educational needs. To empower youth across boundaries, the Disney Imaginations Hong Kong Design Competition invited guests from the GBA as well as international universities to join. We also organized our first performing arts inspiration program, A Magical Odyssey in Music, for local and other cities' youth. The program featured young artists from the Philippines, Hong Kong, and the GBA mainland cities. Hong Kong Disneyland continued to support local sports development by hosting the homecoming celebration for the Hong Kong China delegation to the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. And our 10K weekend continued to be very popular, attracting a record-breaking 20,000 runners, making a record number of participants from international destinations as well. The steadfast support of our guests and the unwavering dedication of our cast members are important in driving our success and strengthening Hong Kong's tourism. Our achievements would not be possible without them. On average, Hong Kong Disneyland employed about 9,000 staff members during 2024, remaining one of Hong Kong's largest employers in the tourism and family entertainment industry. Hong Kong Disneyland provided over 380,000 hours of professional and technical training to our staff last year because we firmly believe that investing in our talent is an investment in our future success. As I mentioned just now, we are celebrating a very special milestone in 2025. Hong Kong has just had a great Super March. Everyone is saying how Hong Kong is back now, and as we enter our 20th year in 2025, we will make it not only a celebration for Hong Kong Disneyland, but a celebration and mega event for all of Hong Kong. Just like the successful launch of the World of Frozen, we will have a series of worldwide and regional publicity and promotions leading up to the launch of our 20th anniversary celebration. Since mid-February, Our team has been and will continue to visit 7 international markets to conduct trade briefings for our 20th anniversary celebrations. In the coming months, I'll be with the team in Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, and mainland China, working with our partners in the trade industry to invite everyone to come to Hong Kong and take part in this special celebration, available only at Hong Kong Disneyland. We are also leveraging the strong network at the Walt Disney Company to amplify the buzz and noise of this campaign to all the Disney fans around the world. On April 17th, we're hosting a pre-party event to publicize our 20th anniversary. There will be more than 550 media and content creators from key markets like mainland China and Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia, including the Philippines, Thailand, and Singapore, all gathered at Hong Kong Disneyland to help spread the word back in their home cities and invite everyone to come here this summer. In June, we start the campaign, and we will throw a magical party like never before. Guests and fans will be enchanted by a brand new castle stage show, the largest ever parade, Fantastic, a special edition of Momentous, and much more, all brought to life by the magic of Disney's storytelling. In addition to the 20th anniversary offerings, we have confirmed another project that is entirely funded by Hong Kong Disneyland, which is a Pixar entertainment experience. Following the successful launch of The World of Frozen in 2023, and our current expansion plans with more Marvel-themed experiences as well for our guest offerings, also in development. And with the support of our shareholders, Hong Kong Disneyland has a solid pipeline for our future growth. We are prioritizing innovation and investment in our offerings and our experience, and we look forward to share more with you about all these things as we embrace the future, certainly full of opportunities. I wish to thank all the members for their support through the years, and we look forward to welcoming you as we unveil new projects. This concludes my presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Moriarty.
Thank you, Mr. Moriarty. Now, these are the 13 members who have indicated their wish to speak. Professor Chow Wan Kong, Andrew Lam, Perry Yu, Brave Chen, Edmund Wong, Chen Siu Hong, Ms. Eunice Yung, Mrs. Stephen Ho, Holden Chow, Michael Luk, Gary Zhang, and Michael Tian. 4 minutes each. Professor Chow Wan Kong. Thank you, Chairperson. Now, I'm pleased to hear that the Disneyland Resort has turned around its deficit. I'm pleased to hear that you now have a huge profit. Now, I want to know the timetable for your investment in building a new park. When will that be materialized? How much will be invested? Do you need further injection from the government? Also, the government will strive to implement the plan to allow mainland vehicles to travel to Hong Kong. Now, the cars will be allowed to travel on the Lantau Island only. So has the Disneyland Resort communicate with the Transport and Logistics Bureau to allow these mainland cars to park in the Disneyland Resort? That would add to the revenue of the Disneyland Resort. The Disneyland can also offer discount for hotel accommodation and ticketing discounts to the drivers. Now, there are lots of promotional campaigns. We now have multiple entry visas. So I wonder if the Disneyland has offered an annual ticket package to visitors from other places. And will the Disneyland invest more in stepping up publicity in the other 8 cities in the Bay Area so that there will be more visitors from these cities, which will also bring indirect contribution to our tourism industry? Chair, allow me. Now, the Marvel theme park and Pixar theme park, the government will not inject further funding into Disneyland. There is already a development fund for Marvel. For the Pixar one, Disneyland will fund the development. I will hand over to Mr. Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we focus on investment, right now our focus is very close in. As I mentioned, the 20th anniversary will feature a new Castle Stage Show, a new parade. In fact, it's the largest parade that we've ever had at the resort, as well as in addition to our nighttime spectacular in Momentous. After that, of course, will be the Pixar entertainment experience and then Marvel. So I think we have a very solid lineup. I think any discussions about expansion after that will really have to be to the shareholders. And as it relates, just to repeat again, as it relates to any additional funding, we have no plans to come back to LegCo for additional funding. Thank you for your observation on the cars traveling into Hong Kong and the availability on Lantau. We're very close to the situation, and we're looking for opportunities on how we can work together there. As it relates to visas and the addition of visas, making Hong Kong effectively more friction-free to visit, we welcome any of those policy changes, not just from the mainland, but for other countries in Southeast Asia. As we look at one of the opportunities that have come from that, as you mentioned, the GBA and the focus on all of the cities in the GBA, our fastest growing segment within our Magic Access program, which is our annual pass program, is in fact guests from the GBA. So we are finding those guests that think of Hong Kong as part of their living circle are really attracted to that product and coming to Hong Kong Disneyland frequently.
好，跟住
Thank you. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. Chair. Now, Disneyland Resort's performance has recovered together with our tourism industry. That is very good. I have two questions. Compared with 10 years ago, in terms of the theme park attendance, the number has surpassed the peak. Now it is at 7.7 million. 10 years ago, it was 7.5 million. Now, that's one thing. However, the hotel accommodation rate is just 73%. 10 years ago, it was 93%. I understand that there is one hotel resort under renovation. I think after the renovation is completed, the hotel accommodation rate may rise back to 88%. Now the gap compared with 10 years ago, is it solely because of the renovation projects or are there other factors? Second question. In terms of attraction to visitors, now I think there are 6 Disneyland resorts in the world altogether. Now for your theme parks and other facilities, now do you have a database for the VIPs of your resorts or those who are most attracted to your park? Are there visitors who want to visit all 6 Disneyland resorts in the world so that they will definitely come to Hong Kong? Do you have a database of these die-hard fans? Mr. Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 10 years ago, the resort was operating 2 hotels, roughly 1,000 hotel rooms between the Disneyland Hotel and the Disney's Hollywood Hotel. Subsequently, we've opened up a 3rd hotel with 750 rooms. And so that is part of the reason why occupancy is lower. We've added a lot more hotel rooms. I think it's also important to recall that part of last fiscal year was still during a time of recovery for international and overnight vacation arrivals in Hong Kong. And so I think it's really reflective of that. In fact, I think we're very proud of how the hotels are performing this fiscal year, certainly above pre-COVID levels. As it relates to your question on VIPs, we have a wonderful program that guests can join called the My Disney Fans account, and we often provide regular benefits to them. As it relates to a worldwide database, while there are many fans that enjoy all Disney parks, and we see that happening quite frequently, especially from around the region. We see guests from Shanghai and from Tokyo coming to visit what is unique and special about us in Hong Kong. We do not have a database for all 6 parks and who those fans might be. But they do come to Hong Kong and visit us here.
Thank you.
No, ma'am, I think I
Okay,
answered
thank
both
you,
questions.
Thank you. 冇跟進啦。
No follow-up questions from Mr. Lam as well. Mr. Perry Yu. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm pleased to hear that the Disneyland Resort has made record high profits in terms of theme park attendance, new source markets, and also hotel accommodation. All the indices record encouraging growth. So as a representative from the tourism sector, I'm pleased to see the efforts from Disneyland has paid off over the past few years. It highlights the importance of innovative products and experience. That explains why the Disneyland Resort can seize the recovery trend after the epidemic. Now, this year is the 20th anniversary of Disneyland Resort Hong Kong. I hope that Disneyland can continue to consolidate Hong Kong's position as a premier destination of the world. I have 2 questions, one for the administration, one for the park. I'm pleased to see in paragraph 15, Blueprints 2.0 mentioned that Disneyland Resort will become an important component in deepening the tourism island blueprint of Lantau Island. We always said that the Lantau Island has the potential to become a world-class tourism island. Because we have an international world-class airport, we have a world-class attraction, that is the Disneyland Resort. Ngong Ping 360 is also a world-class attraction. In the southern parts of the Lantau Island, we have world-class eco-tourism resources as well. So can the administration tell me, the CSTB and the Development Bureau and the TLB, you are the 3 major responsibility holders. Now, the airport is under the purview of the AA. The Development Bureau is responsible for the development of the Southern Lantau. So what are your specific work plans to develop Lantau as a world-class tourism island? That's my main question. The other one is for the park. So you are the leader of the tourism sector in Hong Kong. We really hope that Disneyland Resorts can bring benefits to other stakeholders in this sector. Now, in terms of tapping new source markets, especially transit travelers, how can we make them inbound visitors? I believe the Disneyland Resort can use your branding effects to attract them to stay in Hong Kong. Can you offer special discounts to transit visitors to make them overnight visitors? Thank you. Secretary. Thank you, Chan. Thank you, Mr. Yu. Yes, the tourism island blueprint is synergies with Disneyland Resort and Ngong Ping 360. There is an apparent opportunity here. There will be a lot of things happening in Lantau in the next few years. The AA has announced the development of the Sky City. There will be a lot of commercial developments, but there will also be yard mooring spaces and also other attractions. There will also be art galleries. Visitors will be attracted to spend more time near the airport, and there will be synergy with Disneyland. Now, the Development Bureau is now inviting submission of proposals for establishment of resort facilities in Southern Lantau. I look forward to the proposals. Now, in terms of the mainland vehicles coming to Hong Kong, Disneyland can be their first stop. And the Asia World Expo, Phase 2 is being constructed right now. That is a huge performance facilities. The completion time will be aligned with the Marvel theme park of Disney. So it is true that in the next few years, Disneyland resorts can play a larger role in the tourism island concept in the next few years. We will work closely with the Development Bureau and the TLB. The second question I hand over to Mr. Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, first of all, thank you for your congratulations and your support for Hong Kong Disneyland. Certainly, Lantau Island is a tourism hub with inbound traffic coming in, and we are one of those attractors both to Hong Kong and to Lantau Island. So hopefully there are some things that we can do together to help keep people in Hong Kong as they transit from other locations, as we serve as a hub not just for tourism in Hong Kong, but for the Greater Bay Area as well. Thank you.
好啦，跟住
Right, next, Mr. Chan Yong. Sorry, the speaker's not coming through. The mic is not on. Overall speaking, sorry, the mic isn't on. Is that right? Right, go on. All right, back on. I really appreciate the overall result. It's impressive. I'm not going to cite figures again, but the net profit of $800 million itself is really impressive, especially against the current economic situation. And I see more attendances, and that's all due to the national strategy. I'm sure that the Secretary is in the know. You must be familiar with the national strategies. Overall speaking, inbound tourist figures have also increased. So in terms of offering good experience for our guests, we need to keep up with the efforts so that we can continue to take good care of our tourists. So be mindful about the capacity issue. Now, another point I'd like to talk about is this. It's actually a question coming from my constituents. If I understand the matter correctly, in the first quarter of 2025 fiscal year, the Hong Kong DL already repaid 2/3 of the term loans. Now, the government is facing a lot of pressures. So when will the remaining 40% of the loans be paid off? My next question is this. Is it possible for part of the net profit to be plowed back to the government to support the tourism development in Hong Kong or economic development in Hong Kong? Right, Secretary? %40 of the term loans given by the government to the Hong Kong Disneyland indeed has not been paid, but this will be paid within this year because we are the shareholder. And I also very much agree with the member that we need to enhance our capacity so that with increased capacity, we can offer better experience for our tourists, and then we can receive more tourists. So I strongly agree with these comments. As for the borrowings and the repayment, we share the same view as the Walt Disney Company. The money should be invested in other self-funded brand new attractions, and that's how the Pixar new attraction works. I think this is, of course, a good idea. And the current position of the public coffers is such that we may not be able to take forward infrastructure projects lightly. But meanwhile, Hong Kong DL may have their own means to take forward other new attractions using their own funds, and I think this would be more appropriate for the Hong Kong DL.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for your comments and concerns on overall capacity, as it's so highly correlated with our overall guest experience. I am proud to say that our guest experience has continued to improve year over year, not just in terms of the overall experience, but in terms of the value for money, the kindness of our cast members, and the cast member experience really across the board. So thank you for your comments there.
補充一句啫，主席就
Just to add to that, Chair, I know that there are new attractions coming on stream, but meanwhile we have the same show over and over again featuring Mickey. So do consider revamping these shows. Next, Mr. Edmund Wong. Madam Chair, thank you. I remember last year in May, we had the same briefing from Hong Kong DL, and as an accountant, I was quite concerned about the books. Now I see that the net profit of $800 million have been recorded. So congratulations to the Hong Kong DL. I want to ask questions relating to the future development. I see that tourists from Southeast Asia, in particular the Philippines, etc., find Hong Kong attractive. And meanwhile, we're also targeting the Middle East market. I want to know whether there are resources available for publicity efforts in other markets, such as the Middle East, because other Disneyland may be closer, such as the one in France, to the Middle East tourists. So I want to know Hong Kong's appeal to them. How are we going to attract Middle East tourists to Hong Kong?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, one of our primary appeals as a resort in Hong Kong is our international appeal, and I think that's why we do attract so many international guests, not just from Southeast Asia or North Asia, but really from all over the world. In fact, if you were to look at Southeast Asia, roughly 1 in 5 people on every seat on every airplane is coming to Hong Kong Disneyland. If you were to look at what we are doing right now in the Middle East, certainly our partnership with HKTV, we are there with them in lockstep. But if you were to look at our attendance from arrivals to the Middle East, it's 1 out of every 3 person on every plane. So I think we are very attractive to our guests in the Middle East, but not only that, but guests from Malaysia and Indonesia, as well, as we have worked hard to implement a lot of facilities, infrastructure, policies, and food and beverage offerings that are appealing to guests from Muslim countries. The work is going to continue on. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we were going to be in all of our core markets promoting Hong Kong internationally. In fact, next week I'm going to be in Southeast Asia promoting our 20th anniversary with all of our travel trade partners, and we'll continue along these fronts. It's one of our, I think, biggest appeals and biggest contributions to Hong Kong tourism.
主席，我都補充一句。
Well, let me also add to that, if I may, Chair. Of course, the Hong Kong Disneyland will be mounting major publicity campaigns. As mentioned by Mr. Moriarty, one of every 3 passengers from the Middle East flight will visit the Hong Kong Disneyland, and this is, of course, something that we should bear in mind. But what's important is to attract more Middle East tourists to come to Hong Kong. So I personally will be leading a delegation to visit Dubai and Saudi Arabia. There is a trade show for the tourism sector in Dubai. So I will be going to this trade show, and I will also be joining hands with the stakeholders in the industry and other government officials to promote Hong Kong as a tourism destination for our friends in the Middle East. Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you, Madam Chair. I've heard this response from the Secretary and the CEO of Hong Kong Disneyland. 1 of 3 Middle East flight passengers would visit the Disneyland. Of course, this is good news. But I want to further, we should walk the extra mile. We should increase the overall visitor figures. Since the Middle East market is so vast, I want to make sure that resources are put in to attract more of them to come. So this is for the Hong Kong Disneyland and the Secretary to consider in the long term.
But to attract Mid-East visitors, do you have halal food or facilities for prayers? Because I noticed from my visit to European resorts, they do have prayer areas.
Yes, Madam Chair. We have halal food offerings, both for outdoor vending as well as restaurants, and we have prayer rooms for both genders. Yeah.
Facing the east.
Yes.
Thank you. 好細心啦嚇，陳紹雄議員。
Right, very meticulous. Next, Mr. Chan Siu-hong. Madam Chair, I remember that last year at this panel we discussed the same topic, and then Mr. Moriarty briefed us about the situation of Hong Kong Disneyland, and at that point we understood that they managed to suppress the deficit, and the 2024 fiscal year would continue to improve. And now I see that the total attendance figure increased to 7.7 million, and that's a record high, together with a record high net profit of $838 million. I think that we should all congratulate the Hong Kong Disneyland for this impressive result. But meanwhile, I want to talk about history. In 1999, when the Hong Kong SAR government decided to take forward the construction of Hong Kong Disneyland, some figures were cited. Back then, it was estimated that 4 decades after commissioning of the Hong Kong DL, economic benefits of some $140 billion or so should be generated. And according to this paper, it seems that they're on target. Over 19 years, they have managed to generate about $140 billion of economic benefits. So according to the estimation, 19 years of estimation of operation have brought about 7.7 million of attendance. So with ramped up efforts, very soon it will reach its capacity of 10 million. So perhaps we should discuss with the Secretary and the Hong Kong DL about possible expansion in the coming 5 to 10 years in order to enhance capacity. But in order to do that, we need to consider whether there is a possibility of using this site next to it. Secretary, the question for you is whether the government is planning to take this forward. The second question relates to attendance. Another member already asked the question of developing Lantau Island as a tourism island, so I'm going to skip that. In 2024, the ratio of local to non-local tourists or attendances was 40 to 60. That means non-locals accounted for about 60%. And then we also talked about the Middle East market. The fact is, and that's a 22% contribution, the focus of our discussion should be those coming by air and also repeated visitors. What is your strategy in attracting them to come again? 2 questions.
Chair, I will take the first question. That's on the expansion project, so that should be an answer. That should be a question for the shareholder. Now, for this phase 2 site, we haven't got a long-term purpose for the site 2 yet, so there is land available for expansion of the park. And we still have some land remaining in phase 1 for expansion. For each expansion project and each new park area, we can add hundreds of thousands of new attendance capacity to the park. Now, land is a scarce resource in Hong Kong. We really want to fully utilize every inch of the site. So that despite the smaller area, the Hong Kong Disneyland Resort still has everything that other parks have. Now, in mulling expansion projects or a phase 2 expansion, we need to consider whether the demand justifies the expansion and also the appetite of the shareholders on the expansion. Now, there is still some capacity. We can still expand the park. There is still additional capacity available, so we may not be mulling a major expansion projects yet. So land is the most important restraint. Since we still have land, we will keep it on our radar screen and keep monitoring it. Second question, Mr. Moriarty, please.
Moriarty, any points to add on expansion plans and how to encourage repeat visitors?
Madam Chair, as we look to expand our attendance and our occupancy, we look not just for repeat guests, but also first-timers, as the markets of income-qualified tourists are coming into Hong Kong and available to travel outbound from their markets. I think we are poised to really attract and be attractive to these people, but with events like the 20th anniversary and the new Pixar entertainment expansion and Marvel, of course, after that. But I also think that Hong Kong is well prepared for it too, with the expansion of the third airport and the activities going on in Lantau, making it more attractive and not just attractive, but the ability for people to come into Hong Kong. So really looking forward to all of that improving as the macroeconomic situation in plane flight capacity increases.
Thank you. 跟住
Thank you. Mr. Holden Chow, please. Thank you, Chair. My question is on the Phase 2 site for Disneyland. Some years ago, the government has announced taking back the land and make a plan for the land. Now, at present, we can see the Disneyland Resort doing very well, $800 million in profit and 7.7 million attendance. I would say this is really magical. Now, to keep the magic alive, what should we do? Like the Secretary said, you don't have a plan for Site 2 yet, but will the government sit down with Disneyland and think about it? Since we have such a potential to bring in visitors from the mainland and overseas, surely you can expand yourselves and receive more tourists. I hope the magical economy can spill over to the general economy in Hong Kong. Now, for Marvel or Pixar, it seems that the Disneyland Resort is going to develop the theme park on a fully self-funded model. So can the government work it out with Disneyland? Can the same model be applied to Phase 2 land? Can Disneyland fund the expansion projects from its own coffer? That would ensure that the Disneyland can sustain the magic. Secretary, thank you. Let me clarify. It is not the Walt Disney Company which fund the expansion on its own. Now, according to the operational model, the Hong Kong SAR government is the majority interest holder, while the Walt Disney Company is the minority shareholder of the project. So in order to build new theme parks, there are two avenues. First, holding a general shareholder meeting and then decide on the funding model. For example, cash funding or credit facility or share injection or equity injection. Now that applied to the third hotel and the existing expansion projects, for example, the Marvel expansion project. Now concerning my point on no further funding is required, that's about the Pixar project. The investment would come from the revenue of the Disneyland Resort. Of course, under the shareholding structure, the shareholders will also be the government and the Walt Disney Company. Now on Mr. Holden Chow's point, if the trajectory is an upward one, maybe the investors will have the appetite to invest in a new project or even expanding a phase 2 park. I think we still have to see whether there is a stable growth in source market and also the financing model. And whenever there were large-scale expansion projects, we need to obtain funding from the Finance Committee. Under the current economic circumstances, we have to tread carefully. Next, Mr. Michael Look. Thank you, Chair. This year, the Disneyland Resort has performed well in terms of attendance and revenue. I have 2 questions. Of course, more visitors is good, but I'm always worried about too many people in the park. You may have the queue for a long time and the experience may be poor. So how can you ensure that there is high visitor satisfaction despite the high attendance? Second, about talents. Paragraph 7 of the paper, the HKDL has provided some 382,000 hours of professional and technical training. So is the Disneyland Resort self-sufficient in terms of talent nurturing? Is the importation of overseas talents kept to a minimum? Of course, we want to encourage local employment. Now, under the VTC, there is a program called Theme Parks and Performing Arts, Creativity, Higher Diploma. Now, under the program, there is an internship arrangement at Disneyland Resort. So how many interns are there under the program? And how can we be sure that the talents nurtured from the program are what the industry needs? Mr. Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your questions on our cast experience and our guest experience. One, as it relates to our overall guest experience, capacity is very important in terms of managing wait times and the overall experience of our guests. It is something that we are very knowledgeable about and understand the relationship between the number of people in the park and ridership and the overall experience, et cetera. It's also something that we manage several ways. We manage with a tiered pricing program whereby on higher demanded days we have higher tier pricing to keep attendance levels down. We also have programs where we take park reservations to make sure that we do not go over a certain desired amount of guests in a park so that we can ensure that a guest is having a good experience. As I mentioned earlier, our guest experiences continue to be on the rise. As it relates to our cast members, thank you for asking about our 9,000 cast members. I think we view ourselves as a top employer in Hong Kong. In fact, During a very challenging labor market, we've been able to grow our cast base. I think that has a lot to do with not only the great work that we have. We like to say we don't offer jobs, we offer careers, but also fair pay. In fact, this year, our merit and bonus was very healthy, and our cast was there. And that was in addition to our other programs that we have, including employee benefits and other training that, of course, are all self-sufficient.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Gary Chang. Thank you, Chair. The first question is about the revolving facility. Now, cash debts, the current liability, starting from this year, the government's loan will become a current liability. Now, I would like to confirm whether all the debt will be paid back to the government within the year. After the payments, the funding will still be kept within the park for reinvestment. How does that work? So that's the first question on loan. Second, on the debt structure or financial structure, the government is the major shareholder of the company. Now, when the park was built, there was a $4 billion subsidiary capital, which would be turned into ordinary share for sale. Now, back in 2005 and also the 1990s, the government said that it would release or sell its shares at an opportune time. Is this still the government's intention? Under what circumstances will the government gradually withdraw from the shareholding structure? Third question, a macro question. I heard Mr. Moriarty said that there is a strong growth momentum for the GBA source market. Now, this is a hinterland, and there are also members who are concerned how can we increase the patronage from GBA. Yesterday, now it was confirmed that there will be a new cross-boundary rail link between Hongshui-Q and Qianhai. Now, there is a southern extension which will pass by Sunny Bay. So I hope the CSTB and the Disneyland Resort will strive to build this section of the rail link first. Now, the capital works for that section is simpler. Now, if the rail link can take visitors directly to Sunny Bay, together with the Shenzhen-Zhongshan link, we will have a very comprehensive infrastructure package. Like Mr. Moriarty said, we have a world-class airport and world-class attractions on Lantau. And also there is very rapid connection between the mainland and the Lantau. That's great. Now, my final question, maybe it is more difficult to answer. Maybe you can give me some answers after the meeting about the return. Now, the estimation was that the return rate would be 24.7% 20 years ago. Now, 20 years on, how does Disneyland measure up to this estimation? Now, the EBITDA and so on, the value added brought to Hong Kong, is the estimation still the same compared with 20 years ago? Secretary. I have 30 seconds left. I will be brief. Now, Mr. Zhang's last question, we will supplement an answer after the meeting in writing. As I said, about government's shareholding in Disney. Now, our position is that the Hong Kong Disneyland Resort is a major infrastructure, tourism infrastructure in Hong Kong. It is important for governments to maintain its major shareholding position in the resort, especially we're now on the recovery trend. We want to expand the capacity of the resort to attract more visitors and seize the opportunity. In fact, for expansion proposals in the past, the government, as a major shareholder, had much say in terms of the design and capacity. So we don't have a plan to change our position as the major shareholder of the Hong Kong Disneyland Resort. Concerning the Hongshui Q Qianhai Rail Link, when the rail link is constructed, naturally we would like to create synergy with the Disneyland resorts. We will provide the views to the TLB for their consideration. I will invite the Commissioner for Tourism to talk about the loans position.
About the borrowings, the term loans were taken out for the construction of the third hotel, totaling around $700 million. As said just now, about 60% of the term loans have been repaid, and there is a plan to repay the loans in full to the government within this year. And as such, the long-term borrowing will become something of a shorter term as presented in the financial statements. Now, on shares, I think the Secretary already answered the question. According to our agreement with the Hong Kong Disneyland in 2014, $400 million worth of subordinated shares were already converted to ordinary shares. We will continue to keep in view the operation of the Hong Kong DL and convert the shares at appropriate junctures. Next, Mr. Michael Tin. Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary, well, I said on many occasions before, but I need to say this again. I really appreciate the efforts made by the management and the team of Hong Kong DL. The net profit recorded is $838 million. But in the past 3 years, they had they didn't manage to achieve as much. Just in a single year, they're able to make a record high net profit. But let me take a look at the EBITDA. In fact, it increased to $2.3 billion. So it's a high margin, high fixed cost business. They have a lot of fixed expenses to pay, in other words. Now, as I understand, the source market is of crucial importance. Now, because of Hong Kong people going up north for spending, the local visitors figures dropped by 30%, but for mainland visitors, it rose by 90%. Overseas, it rose by 140%. In December last year, something very crucial happened. The multiple trip visa for Shenzhen residents was implemented as you know, for the retail sector, there is a continuous decline. But what happens to Hong Kong Disneyland is that because of World of Frozen, they were able to achieve record high results. And I heard that it's actually Mr. Moriarty's invention. In fact, they were opposing views internally, but they sustained the efforts. They're utilizing the internal resources. Well, they talked about the new attractions such as the Marvel-themed one and the Pixar one. But what we need is major attractions such as amusement, rides, etc. For the Inside Out 2, we go through different areas, different emotions. So will you consider doing something like a remake of The World of Frozen so that you can attract visitors from around the world? Next, I will turn to the 20th anniversary of the Hong Kong Disneyland. It's a Friday. It falls on the 12th of September. And then you have the 14th of September. That's a Sunday. Will you consider giving free tickets to Hong Kong permanent residents. You can have some balloting and allow free admission. Say you can set a quota 15,000. And will you consider charging others at the normal admission, please? Secretary, I thank Mr. Tin for his suggestions on how the theme park should be run. But let me first explain that the success of the Hong Kong Disneyland is underpinned by multiple factors. The world of Frozen, of course, is one major attraction. Another factor is that the epidemic ended and people became interested in Disneyland again. They hadn't been there for a long time, and that's also one of the factors accounting for the success. As for the retail sector, I don't have the exact figures at hand, but let me also respond to the point raised by Mr. Michael Tian. We recorded a double-digit fall for the retail sector in February, but the baseline was actually the figure in February last year. But for 2 consecutive months, we recorded a decline, Secretary. Another factor is that, in fact, last year, people traveled outbound in so-called a revenge style ones because of the travel restrictions being lifted. This year, the situations change, and that applies to Hong Kong as well as the mainland. Coming back to the point about retail sector, the Chinese New Year for this year was in January, and in fact, as I understand, there is actually a real moderate increase by some 1% or slightly above 1%. So we need to be careful about the figures. Anyway, on Marvel, let me explain to Mr. Tan that this is a new major attraction with some exciting ride. And apart from this attraction, there are also other facilities. Just like the world of Frozen is a major attraction. In fact, back then we took reference from the Frozen attraction in Florida, U.S., and we decided to go for something of a bigger scale in Hong Kong. And thanks to the efforts of Hong Kong Disneyland, we've been able to create this major attraction that's Frozen themed. And for Marvel themed attraction, likewise, I'd like to promise everyone that we will do our best in creating the biggest attraction with the strongest appeal. As for the gift for Hong Kong people as part of the celebration of the 20th anniversary, please give us more time to consider all options, including the one proposed by Mr. Tian. Thank you, Chair. Next, Dr. Hui Simon Lee. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'm happy to learn about the books being in the black again. That's impressive. But as mentioned by Mr. Tian, it seems that in terms of EBITDA, there hasn't been a major change. I'd like to know more about changes in cost, for example, since this seems not to have been mentioned in the paper. The second point is to pick up on the point raised by another member, such as annual passes. I want to know how many holders of annual passes are non-locals. For first-time attendance and repeated attendance, what's the ratio, roughly speaking? Do you keep statistics? On average, how many times will a visitor come back? That can show us the clientele and the ratio between local and non-local visitors. And like the Secretary said, this is a petite theme park, and it has its merits, but at the same time, we are competing with other theme parks in neighboring cities such as Shanghai and Tokyo. So I want to learn about the uniqueness of Hong Kong Disneyland, because we could be comparing with Tokyo Disneyland for visitors from Asia. for example. I will take the other question, but I will give the floor to Mr. Moriarty to answer the question on costs and annual passes. Indeed, in Asia, altogether there are three other Disneylands. There are two in Tokyo and one in Shanghai. Hong Kong enjoys this advantage is that, first of all, it's family friendly, it's not too big, and you don't need to walk far to reach another attraction. So you won't be exhausted after a day in Hong Kong Disneyland. The other feature is that we have local characteristics. Say if you go to the Iron Man attraction, you see that we have Hong Kong cityscape as the background, and the new attraction that is Marvel themed will definitely carry local characteristics as well. And we also have some popular franchises in Hong Kong Disneyland. Duffy and Friends, for example. Well, that's a very popular franchise, and we will continue to expand that. Mr. Moriarty perhaps can give you more details. But as far as the government is concerned, we observe that Hong Kong Disneyland is one with local characteristics, is an experience that cannot be copied by other theme parks. And we are also internationalized, and this is something that we should continue to work on. We in Hong Kong is biliterate and trilingual, and that's really unique. In Japan, they speak Japanese. In Shanghai, they mostly speak Mandarin. In Hong Kong, we speak Chinese, but likewise, we also have English as an official language. So with biliteracy and trilingualism, we have a strong appeal to other visitors as well. Right, your time is up. Next, Deputy Chair, Mr. Yim Kong. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, congratulations to Hong Kong Disneyland for the impressive result last year. According to their report, the result is really impressive. But at the same time, I see a decline in local visitor figures, down by 85%. I don't know whether this question has been asked, but may I know the reason why? Well, it's a Hong Kong attraction, so supposedly you should also serve Hong Kong people. So can we have something like the Ocean Parks initiative? Say, can you give a 50% concession for locals whose birthday, who goes to Disneyland on their birthdays? And because this can help attract local visitors to the park. I understand that only for those holding gold passes enjoy this concession. And Dr. Hui Simon Lee also mentioned the same point. That's about the potential visitor growth for Hong Kong Disneyland, and that means Southeast Asian market. We should avoid unhealthy competition with Tokyo and Shanghai Disneyland. World of Frozen, unique to Hong Kong, is a very good idea. But do you have anything else? Say, in Shanghai, they're leveraging on robots. They have robot street shows or parades in that Disneyland. It's interactive. Can you do something like that so as to attract more visitors?
Thank you. As it relates to our local attendance, in 2024, our local attendance, actually, it did decline from 2023, but I think we have to remember that in absolute terms, 2023 was a record year for us with local attendance, largely as a result of still being impacted by the effects of COVID-19. That being said, I think it's probably important to note that our attendance in 2024 for local guests is still well above 2018 levels, so pre-COVID levels. And I think a lot of that has to do with the improvements that we've made to the resort, including the Castle of Magical Dreams, the nighttime show. But as you mentioned, also the promotional aspects as well. So for our Magic Access guests, there are a lot of benefits, including birthday benefits. Right now, we actually have an offer for just Hong Kong locals called Double the Fun. And it is what it sounds like. It's 2 tickets for the price of 1, and that's going to be extended from now through the month of July. So we're excited about that. I think as it relates to the overall mix, I think that as we move forward, we're going to continue to look at a mix of a balanced mix between local, mainland, and inbound international guests. Roughly 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Of course, that will change over time, but that's what we're targeting right now. And it's really the differentiation that we have to your questions about the uniqueness of our attractions. In addition to World of Frozen, we have the largest Marvel hub in all of the Asia parks. We're opening up a brand new unique parade, the largest that we've ever had here. And of course, our nighttime show is unique to us as well. In addition to a number of other attractions, including Mystic Manor, which is only at Hong Kong Disneyland, Grizzly Gulch as well. So I think in addition to those things that the Secretary mentioned earlier that are really well represented as to our uniqueness and differentiation in the market, we have unique attractions, unique to Hong Kong attractions as well.
Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Thank you, Chair. Secretary, and Mr. Michael Moriarty, I think you both brought the park good luck. I'm pleased to see that the Disneyland Resort has performed marvelously last year. But I have several questions for you, for the park and the Secretary as well. Some might have been asked by my predecessors as well. Now, at the 20th anniversary, the fantastic parade and the new castle performance will be put up, and also there will be an expansion. That's the castle stage show. So what is the expected increase in attendance number? Does the government and the Disneyland Resort have a KPI? And are there targeted publicity campaign in specific markets? Now, according to the Blueprints 2.0 for developing Hong Kong's tourism industry, the government will deepen the development of tourism resources on Lantau. Now, Southern Lantau is uniquely positioned to become a world-class tourism resort for marine tourism, just like southern France. There can be island hopping. Now, I wonder how Disneyland Resort can synergize with the development. What about a plan for a berthing facility and so on? Secretary. Now, we have answered the question on South Lantau Tourism Island concepts. Now, to summarize, this is an opportune time to develop the tourism island. We have Sky City, and we have the southbound vehicle scheme, which will bring a lot of vehicles to Lantau. And the second phase of Asia World Expo is being built. We will have a major new performance facility. And the Development Bureau is planning a resort in Southern Lantau. Proposals are being invited, so we will look forward to creative proposals which will create synergy with Disneyland. There will be new expansions and a new self-funded project, so I believe there will be great synergy between the two. Now, for the other parts of the question, I will defer to about the 20th anniversary. Mr. Moriarty, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as it relates to our 20th anniversary, we do not talk necessarily about the commercial terms or expectations of what's going on, but yes, we have those KPIs in place. What I can say is that we are planning on leveraging everyone in our Disney fan base right now, those who have come before, as well as working with the Walt Disney Company, and larger platforms like Disney Plus throughout the region to invite first-timers to Hong Kong and to Hong Kong Disneyland. We're going to do this through a very targeted marketing campaign in all of our key markets throughout Southeast Asia, North Asia, and of course, and in mainland China. In addition to those marketing campaigns, we'll have targeted promotions by channel and by country to attract people to Hong Kong throughout different parts of the year. With respect to the Lantau Island work, especially the pier nearby Hong Kong Disneyland, yes, we can look into that. Thank you.
好啦，跟住咧。
Thank you. Mr. Gary Zhang, second round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Just a very simple question, a follow-up. Just now, the Commissioner for Tourism mentioned that the loan is $700 million in size. Now, when we built Disneyland, initially there was a $6.1 billion loan from the government. Has that been fully repaid? And also for the part that has been repaid. Now it seems that the money is actually still kept within the Disneyland for reinvestment. So how does that work? Thank you. Secretary, Commissioner, Chair. Now the remaining unpaid loan is just $200 to $300 million in size. Now for the hotel, $700 million was borrowed. Now 2/3 have been repaid. In the initial period, there were some injection and loan. Those have been fully repaid. Only the loan for the third hotel remains. Now about the self-funded project. There will be new facilities like the Pixar theme park. The investments would come from the revenue generated by the theme park itself. They would not apply for a funding from the Finance Committee. Thank you. We have completed the item. Thank you very much, Secretary and Mr. Moriarty.
It remains for me to congratulate Disney Hong Kong on the 20th anniversary and for your stellar performance. I'm sure you'll go from strength to strength. Thank you.
Now we move on to the next item. Item 5, proposed legislative amendments relating to the carriage of dangerous goods by air. We will now invite the administration to come in. Those of you who would like to speak, please press the button now. I welcome the government officials for attending this item. Please be seated. I will first invite the government officials to walk us through the proposal. Thank you, Chair. Ms. Zheng Hong, Deputy Secretary for Transport and Logistics. We also have Mr. Samuel Ng, Assistant Director General of Civil Aviation, and Mr. Frank Wai, Senior Safety Officer of the CAD. Ms. Zheng Hong, please. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. A very brief presentation, and then we will have a PowerPoint presentation. Now, today's briefing is about our proposed legislative amendments relating to the latest requirements about carriage of dangerous goods by air announced by the International Civil Aviation Organization. There are 2 technical amendments. Now, every 2 years, the ICAO would update the technical instructions for the safe transport of dangerous goods by air, detailing the packaging, classification, marking, labeling, and loading of dangerous goods on board aircrafts. Now, starting from the 1st of January 2025, the latest technical instructions have been accepted by the IATA, the International Air Transport Association. So the international aviation business are now handling dangerous goods according to the latest instructions. Now we seek to formally incorporate the latest technical instructions into our law to make sure that our regulatory regime is up to date. Now, subject to members' support, we propose to amend the Dangerous Goods Consignment by Air Safety Regulations, that is CAP 384A, and the Air Navigation Dangerous Goods Regulations, Schedule 16 of CAP 448C. In the following, the CAD colleagues will explain the details of the proposals. Also, in relation to other regulatory measures on dangerous goods, besides the IATA's and ICAO's requirements, when necessary, the CAD will impose additional requirements on local aviation companies. Now, there have been a number of cases about power banks brought by passengers on board. Now, we have sent a notice to local aviation airline companies starting from the 7th of April this year. Passengers will not be allowed to use power banks to charge their electronic appliances, and no power banks can be stowed away on the storage space. Now, I will hand over to my colleagues to brief you on the latest amendments. Thank you. I will brief members on the proposed amendments. According to the ICAO, the technical instructions for the safe transport of dangerous goods by air, in terms of air transport, dangerous goods include explosives, compressed gas, flammable liquids, flammable solids, oxidizing substances, toxic substances, infectious substances, radioactive materials, and corrosives. To ensure aviation safety, the ICAO has developed a set of provisions governing the transport of dangerous goods by air under Annex 18 to the Convention on International Civil Aviation. The provisions are also included in the technical instructions issued by ICAO. The latest issue was promulgated in April last year. Now we incorporate the technical instructions through two local subsidiary legislation. One, Dangerous Goods Consignment by Air Safety Regulations, CAP 384A. It regulates shippers and freight forwarders in respect of the proper handling of dangerous goods before offering them for air transport. The second piece of legislation is the Air Navigation Dangerous Goods Regulations, Order 1995, CAP 448C. It regulates aircraft and airport operators in relation to the transport of dangerous goods. The purpose of the legislative amendment is to ensure that our regulatory regime for dangerous goods transport by air is up to date so as to ensure aviation safety. Now, the major proposal includes updating the definition for technical instructions to replace the 2023-4 edition by the 2025-26 edition, so that the latest requirements in the technical instructions are legally enforceable in Hong Kong. Also, there are some technical amendments in the new updates. For example, the classification, packing, marking, labeling, and loading of some dangerous goods. Some examples are as follows. Documentation requirements. The dimensions of packages containing certain radioactive materials must be added. Dangerous goods allowed for carriage by passengers. Now, there is a note specifying dangerous goods allowed for carriage by passengers, which has been relocated in the new technical instructions. Other amendments include updating the names of classification. Lithium battery mark has been renamed to become battery mark. And special provision specifying the requirements for the transport of devices containing nickel metal hydride batteries After the amendment, watches and temperature lockers containing high-drive batteries can be transported while they are not switched off. Now, the latest requirements have been uploaded to the CAD's website. Circulars have been sent to stakeholders, and seminars have been held for the benefit of the aviation trade, and we have set up a hotline. The latest amendments have been published in the Dangerous Goods Regulations published by the International Air Transport Association, or IATA. Trade's consultation. In November last year, we have consulted associations and institutions representing shippers, freight forwarders, and aircraft operators. All of them have no objections to the amendments. Amendments timetable. We plan to introduce the bill for the electrical scrutiny in the second quarter this year and complete the process entirely in July. Now, today's meeting will end at 6:15. Now, do you agree my extension of the meeting by 15 minutes? Now, I have to attend a ceremony, so I will invite Mr. Yim Kong, the Deputy Chairman, to preside over the meeting on my behalf.
Right, the floor is now open. 2 members have signed up, Mr. Chan Siu-hong and myself. So let's give each member 5 minutes question and answer, please. Mr. Chan Siu-hong. In September last year, ICAO revised the technical instructions and promulgated the latest standards in relation to the carriage of dangerous goods by air. The SAR government likewise will be amending the local legislation to implement the relevant technical instructions. It's a technical amendment. I support it, but I'd like to take this opportunity to ask the administration 2 questions. First, paragraph 6. I heard the explanation just now. The Deputy Secretary explained what passengers in general might feel perplexed, and that is, even without the Civil Aviation Department's note or guideline, aircraft operators do impose this requirement, and that means the so-called power banks are not allowed to be stowed away in the overhead compartments. They are not allowed to be kept in the hand luggage. Now, I think the administration just walk us through that. Because of the recent incident, the CAD has issued a new notice that starting from the 7th of April this year, the new requirement will come into force. But likewise, I've received some inquiries from flight passengers. They are puzzled as to how the power banks should be stored. Instead of storage in the overhead compartments, must they put the power banks in their own pockets? The second point is that, as I understand from the TIs issued by ICAO, upon updating Schedule 18E, I see this phrase in English. There is no Chinese translation, and it said that
inadvertent activation 嘅意思即係新增要求， 就係任何載有鋰電池嘅元件喺航班上，你要確保不受損壞或者。
Well, it means that for devices containing lithium batteries carried in the cabin, it must be protected from damage or inadvertent activation. Does it mean that another protective device should be carried so as to protect the power banks? How is it to be enforced in reality? And then for table 811E, the requirement therein is as follows. For active devices carried by a passenger or crew on board a flight, if the device contains a battery with a certain kilowatt hour, then, well, I don't quite understand this part. Battery as a component, that means it's not something that you can board with money. The other question relates to paragraph 10, and that is about replacing or renaming lithium battery mark as battery mark. I don't see details here. I am quite puzzled. Does it mean that not only lithium battery mark will be covered, but all kinds of batteries will be covered? Can you account for this change? Who will take this question, please? Assistant Director General. Thank you, Chair. Let me first explain what happens on board a flight. Because of passenger safety, we have introduced this new requirement. Power banks must not be stored in the overhead compartment. It should not be used for charging other devices. Now, I think that this is understood. As for the inquiry you mentioned, I think the passenger should inquire with the aircraft operator, because the different they operate different planes with different facilities. Well, that means before we board a flight at the check-in counter, we should ask the crew, right? But I've encountered this situation. I was just told that you cannot stow it away in an overhead compartment. That's all. I want to know whether the CAD has another advice, for example, whether you should keep it in a special bag. Roughly what size of the power bank would be allowed, for example. And say if the crew doesn't allow the power bank to be stowed away in an overhead compartment, what about under the seat? I think the department should draw best practices for the public in order to allay their concerns. I'll try to answer this question, Chairman. I understand where you're coming from. Normally, the crew will require flight passengers to put their personal belongings either under the seat of in front of you, or that for really small items you should be allowed to keep them in your pocket. But for safety reasons, we are only proposing that the power banks not be stowed away in an overhead compartment. So unless this is objected by a crew member, basically it can be kept under the seat. And basically any passenger can put the power bank in a sealed bag or some other containers. What about the kilowatt hour? I would advise the member to go to the CAD's website. It sets out the dangerous goods that can be carried by flight passengers and crew. And there are ways for us to calculate the kilowatt hours. For example, if you know the ampere and the voltage, you can then come up with the kilowatt hour reading. If need be, you can approach the CAD staff to answer this question. Well, if I may, Chairman, I need to ask a follow-up question. I've received inquiries as to how many power banks a passenger can carry on board. Let's say if one power bank has a capacity of 10,000 kilowatt hours, then how many power banks can be carried? According to the technical guidelines, each item is limited to 100 kilowatt hour. This is according to ICAO's stipulations. Per item, is that right? I mean, for each power bank that each passenger carries on board a flight, the capacity should not exceed 100 kilowatt hours or 100 watt hour. As for the number of power banks, according to IATA, there is an additional requirement, and that each passenger must not carry more than 20 power banks with 100 watt hours capacity. Right, what about this other question of relating to lithium battery mark? Now, the ICAO notes that apart from lithium battery mark, there is also another kind of sodium-based battery. And that is why it has decided to rename lithium battery mark as just battery mark to capture other common types of batteries. Next member, Mr. Perry Yu. Thank you, Chairman. Well, I didn't want to ask this question, but after listening to the assistant DG's or deputy DG's reply, I need to ask this question. Is it that you consulted the aircraft operators in November last year? Can you tell us what their concerns, what their views are? And following on what Mr. Chen Xiu-hong said, I also need to make this comment. I think it's everybody's responsibility to protect passengers on board a flight. So this legislative amendment is also necessary. However, we also need clear guidelines for flight passengers to follow. The do's and don'ts, in other words. You mentioned that no storage of power banks in overhead compartments is allowed. So that means you need to update your guidelines. You should advise passengers either to put the power bank in your own pocket or in a small bag to be stored under the seat in front of you. Well, these are easy to understand. What happens when you put this power bank in the suit pocket and then a crew member helps you hang this suit jacket or put this suit in the overhead compartment? Then am I breaching the rules? I mean, you need to clarify the guidelines. You also need to ramp up publicity to make sure that every flight passenger understands the new requirements so as to ensure flight safety. That's my comment. Thank you, Mr. Yu. I share the same view as Mr. Yu, so I'm not going to repeat those. Safe to say that you need to step up publicity and make sure that the guidelines are clear enough. My other question is this. Power banks will not be allowed on board a flight with the introduction of the new requirement. But are charging facilities available on the flight? Some patients require oxygen supply and the machine may need charging. So will exemptions be allowed without compromising safety?
Thank you, Chairman and Member, for your two questions. I will answer the question in a consolidated manner. Concerning the briefing held in November, we met with shipping agencies, shippers, and freight forwarders. and airport aircraft operators. We briefed them on the major changes in the new technical instructions. None of the stakeholders objected to the changes. Now, IATA was involved in the technical meetings of the ICAO. They have already included some of the new technical instructions in their internal guidelines. So the aviation industry is already aware of the new instructions. Second, about where the power banks should be stowed away on flights. Now, we have considered flexibility on the part of the aviation companies. So the only requirement was that power banks are not allowed to be stowed away in overhead compartments. That's the only requirement. Now, for oxygen support for patients, devices for medical purposes are entitled to exemptions. There are still some restrictions concerning the power capacity of the batteries. The patients should notify the airline company in advance. Now, for electric wheelchairs, there is a huge batteries in the wheelchair, but usually airlines will allow the wheelchair to come on board. Any more questions from Mr. Chan Siu-Hong? Thank you. My answers have been answered. My only concern was that the name of lithium battery is changed to batteries. Now, of course, sodium batteries are also a kind of dangerous goods, but I was asked by many people, after the change, what about the AAA batteries which are not chargeable? Are they within the scope of the new requirements? Well, I don't think so, but I would like to seek a clarification from you here. Only sodium and lithium batteries are considered dangerous goods. For one-off batteries, they are not subject to the regulation. Thank you, member, for your questions. Now, the battery mark applies to goods only. When the freight is carried on board, the marking would be battery. Previously, the marking was lithium battery. Now it's a change to battery. That doesn't affect power banks or batteries carried by passengers. Now, for articles allowed on board, there is already a technical list for that. Now, as I said, we have already uploaded the requirements onto the CAD's website. Some articles are allowed to be brought on flights, subject to some restrictions. Some are not allowed. Thank you very much. That concludes our discussion. Do members support the submission of the bill to the proposal to the Legislative? Thank you. We thank the three government officials for attending today's meeting. The last item, any other business? There being no AOB, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
多謝你哋。